I'm John Graves with Rebecca Berry, and we both work with Vision America in partnership with FRC and Watchmen on the Wall. And today we wanted to explain a little more of the practical side of the 2028 Pastors Outreach. This project, as most people know, allows pastors to compare their membership data to the public voting and registration data. And in that data, the pastor then gets a report back that shows him the percent of his congregation that is registered and that is voting. And so what we want to do today is give a little more of a practical insight into that. The scripture that we base 2028 Pastors is Acts 20:28. And in this scripture, it says, "Pay careful attention to yourselves and to all the flock the Holy Spirit has made you overseers to care for the church of God, which He obtained with His own blood." And so basically it's a stewardship of being a shepherd. And very quickly, this basically says to the pastors, pay careful attention, have accurate knowledge. Most pastors don't know that half their people aren't registered to vote, and that half of them don't vote in the presidential, 25% are all that vote in a non-presidential, and sometimes in most states, 5% is all that is voting in a primary to decide who the candidates are. In addition to that, the pastor is supposed to focus on himself, to his political involvement. And for like most of us, that's an ever-growing thing where we get more and more involved. But it's not just watching out for ourselves and making sure that we're engaged in the culture to be salt and light. We're also to watch out for the flock, the congregation that God has entrusted to us. And the last thing it says is that the Holy Spirit made pastors overseers, and this is something that is God's church. God wants us to be good stewards of that. This tool is private, and this tool is free, and so many times we will have a pastor's event, and at that pastor's event, pastors will agree to be a 2028 pastor. It's not something they do, it's who they are. They're a shepherd that God called to oversee their flock. And then we follow up with those pastors, and the most successful churches at this process are the ones that have a culture impact team. If they have a leader in that church that the pastor is given authority to, then in those churches we see the most success. And so Rebecca is usually the one following up, calling the pastors, talking to the leaders of that church. And so she's going to explain some of how that practically plays out.
Okay. First, we want to talk about format preference, but before I go into that, I want to explain that many times we have these conferences and pastors are excited to be at this conference. They're excited to be at they're excited to be a part of it and to sign up to be a 2028 pastor. Well, what happens then is I end up calling them about a week later, and what we've discovered is many of them are now too busy to engage. So this is where it's really important that we need a strong CIT leader to take the fire that was at the conference, so the pastor can be freed up to pastor, and then the CIT leader can take over with submitting the list, going forth with what was implemented at the conference. Right now, we have format preference of how we'd like to receive a list from a pastor. I want to dispel any fear about this because we've received many lists and absolutely nothing shocks us. We know that there are churches where there's one pastor, one secretary, and keeping stellar records is just not really the top priority. We've received church memberships in the form of just a Word document. We've received pictures of their directory. We can work with anything. From what you see here, we also take Google Sheets, we also take Apple Numbers, but the primary way that we love to receive a list, and it's how our database needs the list, is in Excel format. So the best way to do it is to send your list into Excel format.
And the two things I would say is be patient and be persistent. Be patient. This is a complicated process on our side, and we're trying to do this in multiple states simultaneously. So the data part on the back is really complicated. So be patient with us, but also be patient with your pastor. Be patient that they're busy people, they want to make a difference, and just be very patient. But in your patience, don't forget to be persistent, to stay after this, because a lot of times it's something that is wanted to be done, it needs to be done, they see the need for it, but they have a lot of other demands. And so the next thing we'd like to turn to is what increases the highest percentage of match rates between the church membership list and the public data.
Okay, what we have here is what we need to get exactly a good match for your church. And what I'm talking about is the public information that is required for voter registration or just to see who's voting is found with just a simple name and address. But we know that a lot of people, when they fill out their voter registration card, are using their full legal name. Well, you may have someone in your church who's going by their nickname. Say you have Robert Smith on the voter registration card, but on your church membership list, he's Bob Smith. Well, that little discrepancy alone is going to make our process not get an accurate match. So the best thing we can do is always start with the name and address, but then what would help us is if we had additional information like a date of birth, an email address, a phone number, a spouse's name. We even one time had someone that we knew was registered to vote. We were searching for them because they said, hey, I'm registered, but what they did not do is they were going by their maiden name on their voter registration card because it was from that long ago. So what we need is an exact name that is on the voter registration card. If you don't have that, we need this extra information just to be sure you get an accurate match.
And the thing to keep in mind there is we don't require anything other than a name and an address, but the more data that the church gives us, the higher the percentage, and we want to get as close as we can to 100% of these pastors' church membership list matched. And so a lot of times if you have an email or a phone number, a date of birth, or the full name or multiple addresses, it will increase 70% match rates to 80, 90, or close to 100%. And so that's the purpose of it. And what you've always got to remind the pastor or anyone you're dealing with that the pastor has delegated authority to in the church is that this is all private anyway. Obviously, if there's anything personal, we don't want any of that information, and it's not very helpful to us either, because this is really information that's helpful to the pastor. So once that list is submitted, then the next thing that happens, and this is what really motivates the pastor, this is what really is helpful to the pastor and the leaders in the church and the Culture Impact team, ministry team, is the report. And we call this a Culture Impact Ministry Report. So Rebecca and her team will then be calling the pastors and explaining it. So can you give us a little more color on that?
Okay, well, this is the result after first the pastor has gone on to 2028pastors.com and they have signed our privacy policy. And we've had accurate matches. We've got a great list in Excel format. We then can move on to this. This is our this is an example of what our cultural impact report looks like. The first part it's going to show is who is registered and who is not. This report will not show a name. It's only going to show percentages of your congregation. So you want to look at the first top line is just who is registered and who is not. Then it goes into important demographics, such as age ranges of who's voting in your congregation. It also goes into who voted in the last 4 elections and what the percentage was for the general and what the percentage was for the primary. So this is the tool that's going to impact the pastor and how he needs to approach his congregation in regards to voting.
And one of the things to keep in mind is that this is a tool that increases knowledge and accurate information. The scripture says, be diligent to know the state of your flocks. And what we want is for the pastor to know how involved in the culture at the basic level of registration and voting is his church. And cultureimpact.org, Vision America, 2028 Pastors, FRC, all have many, many resources to talk about, and we're going to turn a little bit of our attention here, but there are many more resources about Citizenship Sundays, voter registration drives, and those kind of things. This data is meant to help the pastor mobilize his people. And one of the things that we've seen is a marked increase. George Barna says that if 10% of the Christians that are born again believers in this country would just simply vote, would just get involved in the electoral process, pro-life, pro-family, religious liberty candidates in the Senate, the Congress, and the White House would sweep across the nation. We've seen almost 3 times that. And sometimes I say to pastors or Culture Impact team leaders who feel like, well, you know, what difference can we really make? Remember that the President of the United States in 2000 was decided by 537 votes. And that's 1 or 2 small churches that could literally decide the White House in this nation. And so just a real quick slide on these statistics. If you'll look all the way over here to the far left, the gray represents the turnout in the county. And that turnout in the county was in the election in 2014 in churches that we worked in counties that we worked in, mobilizing pastors. The darker gray or black in the middle represents known pro-life, pro-family voters. And you can see how many more of those that we were trying to get out. But if you'll look at those blue numbers on that dial, or that graph, those blue numbers represent 2028 pastor churches. And those churches significantly, and more importantly, it's the ones, if you'll look to the left, the 0, the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. The 4 means out of the last 4 elections, they voted all 4 times. The 3 means they voted 3 out of the last 4 times, and so forth, all the way down. It's the low propensity or the Christian who doesn't often show up and vote that really changes a lot of these elections. And so some of the other tools that we have are Citizenship Sundays. Can you cover some of that? Okay,
so once you have your effective cultural impact report, you now know how to run an effective, what we call Citizenship Sunday. And from this is where you're going to do your voter registration Sundays. This is where your pastor is going to announce it in the pulpit to go get registered to vote. Another thing that you do, or that you can visit, is yourvoteunder.god.com. This is a great resource to run a very effective Vote Under God for your church. Not only does it have tools for step-by-step instructions to run an effective Voter Sunday, but it also has a media kit that does promos. It has text that you can promote on your website, or if you don't have a website, it has a media packet which includes the videos and graphics, and all of this is free of charge.
And there's, again, to reference Culture Impact's website, FRC has these. Watchmen on the Wall has developed an entire kit that they will send to help do these, and we're constantly improving these. In fact, just this week, I was meeting with one of the larger churches in this country. And it was an amazing thing that happened, because the pastor of that church had said, I want 100% of our people to register. So I was brought in to the campus pastors in a meeting, and it was really incredible, because I began to talk about, you can set up a voter table, you can send an email and do it online, you can send a mail piece, you can do all these different things, but the percentages take a long time to do it. And I just suggested, I'd been praying the night before, and I just felt like, you know, if they really want to get 100%, here's one way to do it. And so I made this suggestion to those pastors, and I knew some of them very well. And I said, have all the people in the church stand up, and then simply say, if you know you're registered to vote, would you sit down for a moment? Have the ushers come forward, and have those ushers have with them the voting guides, the stamped envelopes to mail them back. And in our state, many states, not all states require this, but in our state, you have to have deputy registrars. Well, that's a very simple thing that's no legal exposure to the church, and you do a 20-minute teaching at the county office, and you can receive those voter registrations. Well, one of the pastors in that meeting said, why can't we make this an item of prayer that as that's happening, they're doing a worship song, they're filling it out right there in the service, and we can begin to pray over those. And then another pastor said something that I don't think I'll ever forget, and we're now going to start trying to do this all over the country. He said, what if we had those deputy registrars not in the table, not in the door on the way out, but at the altar, and made this an act of worship, and made this an act of prayer, where as these people came, and the image in my mind, the Matthew 5 salt and light we always talk about, it was like literally every one of those new people, whether it's hundreds or thousands in this church's case, they're little specks of salt that are now going to be engaged in the culture. And I was talking to a pastor just this morning, and he said, you know, what we're starting to do is even in our intro membership Sunday or membership classes, we're giving them voter registration guides to make sure from the very beginning we're not going to have to grow the church over a year or 2 years and then do a voter registration drive. And so there's constant tools. Please go to those websites, Culture Impact's website, FRC, Watchmen on the Wall. Now, we want to cover finally a couple of frequently asked questions, some of the things that come up over and over again that the Culture Impact team leaders are going to want to know. And so could you cover some of the most common things you hear?
These are some of the most common questions that I hear. And first of all is, will my members be contacted or have their information sold? And we want you to rest assured that your membership list will never be sold. It will never be solicited. It will never be contacted. It will have email. It will never be contacted through email, phone, or mail. So that will never happen. The next thing is, will my members' information be secure? We use industry standard data collection methodologies to securely collect your information and store your sensitive information. That is not something that you need to be concerned about. The last one is there any cost for these services? No, this report is completely free. It is our privilege to provide this tool for all pastors who want to have a cultural impact report.
We hope this has been helpful. Obviously, this is not completely extensive. You can email us at info@2028pastors.com. You can call us. You can look at all the tools. We'll continue to post these things on our website. But I want to say one word of hope to you at the end. Our hope is not in a political system. It's not in a political party. It's not in a political election. Our hope is in Jesus. He's the only hope for this nation. And so what we do is to try to continue to engage this culture to be salt and light, regardless of what's happening in an election cycle. Serve your pastor. Honor your pastor. Be patient with your pastor. But please continue to be persistent with it. Part of what drives me is I believe there's a spiritual revival, there's a spiritual awakening coming. And if you study the history of revivals, only pastor-led revivals are sustained and long-term and impact an entire nation. And so I believe if pastors get good information, we don't have to tell them how to lead. We don't have to tell them what to do even. They're called by God to be shepherds. We just need to get them good information. So please stand with us in this project. Thank you, and God bless you.